his work as a leader of minority. And therefore, and I see the spirited attempts to defend our good friend Mary Nyakango, the controller of budgets. And it's indeed true, Honorable Margaret. Honorable Speaker, you can hear I'm not very privy to the names than those in the minority. But Honorable Speaker, the spirited attempt to defend Mary Nyakango by the leader of minority is what I also saw yesterday with certain political quarters. But I would really want to urge all of us to treat the matter for what it is. And I want to agree with the leader of minority that indeed Margaret Nyakango holds an independent office, together with the Auditor General. What I do not agree with the leader of minority with is that holders of independent offices, there is absolutely nothing in the Constitution that says a holder of an independent office cannot be charged or is above the law. And the matters that Margaret Nyakango has been charged with in court are out there in the public domain, are issues that came, or she's being accused of, issues that happened at a time she was not the controller of budget, way back in 2016, in some financial institution that she managed or ran. And there are complaints lodged. And therefore, when investigative, Honorable Speaker, I hold a constitutional office as leader of majority. If at the time I was selling meat as a butcher in Kikuyu, I had certain improprieties, and Junet, who used to supply me with cows, complains that I never paid him, or I took off with some of his money. Honorable Speaker, I am found culpable to be charged. I think those are matters we should leave before the courts, for the court to consider what evidence will be adduced by the DPP and the DPP's witnesses, and whatever defense Margaret Nyakango will mount in court. Because I agree with Honorable Chepkonga, it is one thing to read the Constitution and claim independence of the office, excluding us from reading the Article 6 on integrity. Honorable Speaker, what you are being invited by the leader of minority to pronounce yourself on is not for you to pronounce yourself on. Because what the leader of minority is now inviting you to is a political duel. And it is okay for the political duel out there in press conferences, in other organized media, but to attempt to use this chamber to prosecute a matter that is in court, I think the leader of minority also duly noted that matter will be sub judice, and I would really want to implore on him to heed your advice that even those who seek to defend Margaret, they may actually be prejudicing her case in court. It is safer for us to leave that matter to court. Let the court make a determination based on evidence that will be adduced in court. We don't know what evidence the DPP has. There is nothing in our Constitution and in our laws that say either the Auditor General or the holder of an independent office like the controller of budget are immune to prosecution. And in fact, that will be the height of impunity if we say that a holder of a constitutional office, like the leader of majority, is immune to prosecution, that independent office holders or constitutional commission holders are immune to prosecution. Honorable Speaker, when we say that we shall deal with impunity, and this House, including the leader of minority who is a member of this House, must be seen at the forefront of the fight against graft. And graft, Honorable Speaker, is not only graft when it touches on public funds or on public office. Even those who are in the private sector who engage in graft, Honorable Speaker, we must have the forefront as leaders to speak against graft and impunity in this country, Honorable Speaker. It is not lost on me, Honorable Speaker, that the same people today who purport to be defending Margaret Nyakango are the same people who yesterday were vilifying the same Margaret when she spoke about state capture, when she spoke about how she was forced in the wee hours of the last regime to withdraw 15 billion shillings from the exchequer. Thank God, Honorable Speaker, that today we are not speaking about Margaret Nyakango being forced by anybody in government to make withdrawals from the exchequer or to approve payments that she thinks should not be approved. We are talking about impropriety on the person of Margaret Nyakango before she came into office as the controller of budget. Nothing to touch on her conduct in office. Honorable Speaker, lastly, I was a co-chair of the National Dialogue Committee. And I know a matter that Margaret Nyakango said in that committee that has now been blown out of proportion. And I heard the leader of minority allude to it, although selectively, with some selective amnesia of what was said in that committee. But because I was chairing that committee, I know when the National Treasury CS answered on the question of whether there was budgeted corruption on expenditures in the office of Margaret Nyakango. Because I remember Margaret Nyakango said that there is budgeted corruption, and I can give the example of my own office, where I am the only public officer. I know how much I earn, but what was budgeted for my pay was almost 2 times. And Honorable Speaker, the National Treasury did explain that part of what was budgeted for in the Office of the Controller of Budget included other entitlements to that office, like car grants, mortgage, which had not been taken. Honorable Speaker, again, out of what the Honorable Leader of Minority seems to be doing very well, to push political narratives, that with selective amnesia, they have opted not to hear the explanation from the National Treasury. And I wondered if there was budgeted corruption on matters touching on the salaries and wages of only one officer, that is Margaret Nyakango in the Office of the Controller of Budget, who then would have been the beneficiary of that money other than herself. Therefore, it's a fallacy, Honorable Speaker, to say that somebody is budgeting for corruption in my office and I'll be the beneficiary. Honorable Speaker, again, as I said, those in the minority, for the sake of pushing political narratives, opt not to hear that. And they only want to run away with the claim of budgeted corruption, double salary, without the rebuttal from the National Treasury explaining why the figures were what they were, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I would really beg that you do not entertain the thought of inviting this House or the Office of the Speaker to make a determination on a matter that is squarely in the domain of the courts, another arm of government, and they will be able to make an informed decision based on evidence of whether there was impropriety on the person of Nyakango before she became the controller of budget or not. And that we should not even be debating, Honorable Speaker, as the leader of minority said, it is a matter that is subject to this. Honorable Speaker, lastly, nobody has said Nyakango is vacating office. I don't know where the leader of minority has gotten that from. But if the law was to be followed, the law will be followed to the letter in terms of how you get into office, when and how you leave office. Therefore, I know the invitations and I saw the flurry of activities, including people exciting ethnic emotions and wanting to mobilize around ethnicity, Honorable Speaker. We must desist and deal with matters to do with court cases, deal with them in the courts. Those dealing with graft, deal with them with the agencies that ought to deal with them. For us as leaders, Honorable Speaker, and as parliamentarians, we should rise above the fray of political engagements when it comes to the chamber and play our role to oversight all these institutions, including the Office of the Controller of Budget and the DPP, Honorable Speaker, and therefore plead with you not to agree to be invited to what you are being invited to by the leader of minority.
I don't want to escalate this matter.